That's Nick.
And that's Joseph. And today we're here to talk about Stowaway, the sophomore film directed by Joe Penna, which will receive its world premiere, courtesy of Netflix, April 22nd, 2021.
You've seen Joe's first film.
Mr. Penna's first film. He's Brazilian. This was a U.S. German co-production. His first film was Arctic, 2018 title starring Mads Mikkelsen, which is basically a one-man survival show against the elements, as the eponymous title suggests, in the Arctic. And that film premiered at the 2018 Cannes Film Festival in the always very curiously programmed midnight section. And before that, he was a very notable YouTube sensation in Brazil.
Do you know for what? What kind of content did he make?
Musical, I believe. And he also directed several short features, and he's reuniting with his usual scribe to date, Ryan Morrison.
Okay, the basic story. A 3-member crew gets shot up into space by a company called Hyperion. Their mission is to do research on Mars to see if they can sustain human life for a long period of time. So there is a research scientist named David.
Yes.
He's played by
Dae Kim.
He is bringing like algae to see if enough oxygen can be produced. The commander of the vessel is
Martha,
played by Toni Collette. Mm-hmm. And then there's a medical doctor named Zoe, played by, I want to say Anne Hathaway, but it's not Anne Hathaway.
Anna Kendrick.
Anna Kendrick. Okay, so they get shot up into space, and once the spaceship is settled and they unbuckle and start unpacking, the commander goes to check a life support system, and when she opens the panel above her, a man falls out. The man falls on her. He appears to be injured. She ends up breaking her forearm. We find out the man, whose name is Michael, played by
Shamier Anderson.
He works for Hyperion as like a
launch support engineer.
So it appears while he was expecting the vessel before it was to be manned and shot into space, he was injured and then fell into like a crevice. While he's in the crevice, whatever caused him to get hurt, or maybe it was his fall, we don't know, it damaged the life support unit, which is referred to as the CDRA.
Mm-hmm. Carbon dioxide removal assembly.
So that's what keeps oxygen flowing throughout the...
It scrubs the carbon dioxide.
Scrubs the carbon dioxide and maintains oxygen levels. Okay. So, of course, the commander contacts Hyperion and says, like, what are we supposed to do? They say, you know, they're working on it back and forth, when ultimately they are advised that there are not enough resources on the vessel, considering that the life support unit, the CDRA, is permanently damaged. Mm-hmm. They cannot accommodate a 4th person. So they need to get rid of him.
And also the Hyperion, the ship was technically only built for 2, and Hyperion figured they could stretch it with 3. So they were already kind of...
running low, thin. So a 4th person definitely is not going to work now that they don't have their full oxygen, or their oxygen supply. Okay, so... The middle part of the film is the crew sort of dealing with this like decision that has to be made and executed.
An ethical dilemma.
And Michael is not told initially what's going on. Eventually, because the research scientist David says, we need to just do it now. Just do it now. The sooner we do it, the more sort of like wiggle room we have with our resources. The medical doctor, Zoe, says no, because the commander tells them, well, headquarters says we have like 20 days to get rid of him before it's like critical, like we're going to be cutting it close. So Zoe's saying, well, we need to exhaust all options. Mm-hmm. And of course the commander's like, I'm following instructions. They have every PhD working on this, and they're telling us that this needs to happen. So while they're like passing the days trying to figure out what they can do, we see that David approaches Michael one night alone after grabbing some medication from Zoe's office, and basically tells him what happened. And that, you know, we tried everything, Zoe really tried, but there's nothing we can do. So I'm gonna leave this with you, and you go ahead and kill yourself when you're ready. He doesn't do it immediately, and before we don't know if he was actually considering it, but Zoe walks in on him and seeing that he looks down, notices the injectable, and then tells him like, no, don't do this, we're gonna find a solution. So her solution is there is like some sort of like tank that's tethering behind the ship that had a supply of oxygen that was necessary for takeoff. And she's thinking that if she can get up there, she can check and see if there's any residual oxygen. If so, fill up some tanks, bring it down, and they'll be fine. And initially, she approaches the commander and the research scientist like, this may sound crazy, but hear me out. And they're both like, yeah, do it. And then we find out that they ended up using all of the algae, all of the vegetation that the research scientists had brought on board to test on Mars. The commander had told him, you need to use it all now to get oxygen because we're going to die if you don't.
Which scuttled years of research and renders this
mission obsolete.
Yeah.
So as Zoe's asking them, like, can we try this? We see that all of the algae he brought died. So they're like, they have no option but to try.
Because she originally had floated that by them, and they said, no, it's 450 kilometers away. You could damage all these panels on the way there.
They do risk assessment, which we'll get into, and they initially decide like it's not worth the risk. But now that like their only option for oxygen is gone, they're like, let's do it. So David and Zoe go up there. There is enough oxygen. However, the system's warned of a solar storm.
They're in the middle of filling up the second tank because they have to get 2 tanks of oxygen, and it's
to allow all 4 to persist.
Live. And a solar storm.
So they have to vacate the outside of the ship because the radiation will kill them. And on the way down, they leave one tank up in the wherever, and as Zoe's coming down, like in a hurry, she drops one into the darkness. So they do their calculations and decide and realize like if they don't get this extra tank, 2 of them will have to die or be disposed of. So Zoe makes it, and the solar storm, the commander explains, will last for hours, but they don't have hours because the tank that they were extracting oxygen from is like leaking. So if they don't get it now, it's gone. So Zoe volunteers as tribute and says, I'll go out there knowing she'll die from the radiation. She is successful in bringing 1 full tank of oxygen down, and that's the end. We understand that 1 tank will allow the 3 remaining crew members to make it to Mars, which that trip we're told takes like 5 months. The end. Okay. I was trying to be quick. This movie was excellent.
Yeah, very impressed.
And I feel like this is the beginning of like things going back to normal, and that we're going to start getting like better movies now. Like all the things people were sitting on, we're going to start.
Well, I think it's unfortunate because Stowaway, which the embargo ends like the morning it premieres on Netflix, also and you know the lack of fanfare that we're now accustomed to. I think in a normal year this would have had a very nice festival premiere somewhere potentially. I've been tracking this project for a while, and I assume this would place him at Cannes again, but I think,
What did I like? Everything. Toni, so the acting from all 4.
Excellent.
Excellent. I really like Toni Collette.
I do too, but she's always good.
She's always good. Anna Kendrick, my impression of her generally is that she plays kind of a sort of like a sassy, smarmy. I don't care for her generally. I didn't like the Pitch Perfect movies, and she does those commercials, I think, for like hotels or Expedia or something, and she's also playing a smug, that was the word, smug character. But she was very endearing in this film. She did an excellent job.
I agree.
So this was a great role for her. And then the 2 other gentlemen.
Yeah, Dae Kim is good. Shamier Anderson, who to me had the only real good scene in City of Lies, which we recently reviewed, who looks kind of markedly different.
Yeah.
I thought he was really good. There's so many really poignant human scenes, which I think is what makes this so important. And I think the only real easy comparison piece would be something like Alfonso Cuarón's Gravity.
Sure.
But yeah, that when he is approached by the research officer about look, this is the deal, and you're gonna have to kill yourself. Just his scene there.
That was excellent.
Kendrick confronting him, telling him she relates a story about something that happened to her as a kid and saving someone from drowning. That I thought was a really excellent way to pivot on this moral dilemma from logistics versus the potential reality that we haven't exhausted all our options.
I'm just going to go down my notes. So the opening of the film is their launch into space, which I thought was really well done because it's very stressful. It's very loud. So it created, I felt the stress of that takeoff and then the sudden calm and serenity of once they get out of the atmosphere that's creating all that. And that was very well done. This is kind of stupid, but I thought it was really cool when, the commander breaks her forearm, and of course Zoe tends to her, and they make like a 3D cast for her. I thought that was really cool. What is MTS-42? Is that the name of their vessel?
I think that's the name of the mission.
Oh, the mission?
Yeah.
Okay.
Because she says welcome to,
Obviously there's some uncertainty about Michael because they don't know if what his intentions are, perhaps, for did he purposely place himself on the ship?
Or is he trying to sabotage?
Is he trying to sabotage the mission? Because when we find out, the one part where he was stuck is the part that supports oxygen production on the ship. Initially it's a little gray because even I thought he has some insidious intentions, but the crew seems to have a lot of trust in him, right away. And there's a really good scene where Michael apologizes and says that he understands it's a small ship and there's not enough room for him, but he wants to, carry his weight. And so I'll do whatever grunt work you want me to do. So immediately they start teaching him all the things, and then he becomes the assistant to David. So they're working on some of the vegetation and they're playing jazz music. And I thought that was a very interesting scene because the music, I enjoy jazz, but that version of jazz is a little more chaotic and not as melodic sometimes. Michael comments that it is distracting, and then David explains that he sort of likes the chaos and he likes how each player will sort of drift off into their own groove. And I thought that it's a little obvious, the symbolism, but I think it's an analogy for what's happening on the ship with these 4 people. Because they're all members of a band and they're all kind of going in their own direction.
And I think that's where we're meant to parse that kind of subtext, because that's where we have David talking about his love for these certain musicians like Sanders and the Bird, saying their stylings are not obvious, it's just pure expression. And I think that is really boiled down what Stowaway is after we've kind of, just as they've exhausted the ripple effects of their risk assessment as things fall away, so do we come to it's boiled down to this very one element of survival and who will survive.
When Michael gains consciousness or regains consciousness and he sees that they're in outer space, he panics no, we can't be here, we have to turn around. Which they're we can't do that because he is the guardian of his sister. And it's not explicitly said, but it sounds like maybe she's a vulnerable adult perhaps, or very young, but it doesn't sound like they're that different in age. Either way, he needs to care for her. So we get background on that. We also understand that he has burns on his body from when he was a small child and there was a fire and he lost his parents, and that's why he is the guardian of his sister ultimately. So we do get some background on Michael, which I think serves to create more empathy.
Humanizes him.
Yeah, for sure.
And then he shares that with Anna Kendrick as the medical officer, and and even her decision to sacrifice, martyr herself, if you will, is because it's seen that she is the only one that doesn't have somebody waiting for her.
Oh, right. But so Michael is sending messages back to his sister because he's advised that Hyperion has found a guardian for her and they're going to make sure that she's well taken care of, take care of all expenses. So there's a part where Michael is sending the video and he comments I thought I was going to be a burden. And I laugh because to the audience is girl, you done ruined this mission,
right?
bitch.
Yeah. Like, actually...
Actually, you're more than a burden.
Yeah, before he gets the bad news, he's all chirpy, like, oh, I'm kind of happy this happened. Like, ooh.
The scene where... So when the commander, Toni Collette's character, tells her two-member crew what the option is, which is to get rid of the fourth passenger, before she does that, she's on a call with Hyperion. And her contact there is named Jim, I think. And we never hear Jim except for like some little muffled, like inaudible noises. But her reaction to him, we can tell that like this is not good. But we don't know for sure. So when the commander tells her crew, the audience is also learning what the options are. I thought that was a really well done scene. But, you know, of course, Zoe and David want to sort of like figure out something else. And she says, this is not a call for a solution.
Yeah.
I'm just letting y'all know.
She's like, I'm letting you know to mentally prepare.
I thought she presented as a very strong leader who still felt human. Because oftentimes in films like this, the commander is very cold. And so I really liked her portrayal, or that characterization.
I think Penna and Morrison do a really great job of showing how these three different people are kind of reacting based on their training in specialized fields.
Yes.
As well.
Yeah.
Because the whole thing with Algie, with David talking to Martha, because she's like, just use all of it. And he's like, well, just because I use the second half of the sample doesn't mean that it's going to double the results. And, you know, how he approaches logistically how this should work versus Anna Kendrick. And again, I thought that was...
Well, I think where each of the three crew members, like the space they occupy complements one another.
Right. Checks and balances.
In relation to the mission, but then there's this wrench that's thrown in, and it's like it's really interesting, like as a sort of character study, to see how these people react to this, you know, this terrible decision that needs to be made. I don't have anything else except that I think this movie is excellent. I would definitely recommend it. I'd watch it again in a theater.
Oh yeah, I think it would, of course it's, as almost all films are better served in the theater, but you know, it was shot by, again, U.S.-German co-production. Klemens Becker was the cinematographer. I think it looks great. We'll soon be reviewing Tom Clancy's Without Remorse, which he also served second unit DOP on. Hyperion is from Greek mythology. It's one of the 12 titans, the children of Gaia and Uranus, so earth and sky, that eventually band together to overthrow their parents, which I think also has some interesting symbolism in there. Yeah, I don't know. I was very impressed. I liked Penna's first film. I think he's outdone himself with this. Yeah, there's really nothing to complain about.
Okay, well, we've had a lot of technical difficulties making this video, so I could be done.
Sure.
All right, what would you give it?
4 out of 5.
I would give it 4 out of 5 as well. Thank you.
Bye.